Hi, my name is Rachel Diaz, and this is my poster presentation. The title is The Use of Man Training to Decrease Tantrum Behavior for a Child with Autism. For this study, I used a 6-year-old girl who is diagnosed with autism, and the study took place at the child's home where her parents have a room prepared for her to receive any therapies or to do homework. When observing the child, the problem behavior that was identified was tantrum behaviors, where she would engage in these behaviors when she wanted something or wanted to escape a task. And even though she is verbal, she struggles to communicate her needs or express herself with others. And the function of this behavior was hypothesized to be for access and or escape. And that's when I used the research question to see if man training would decrease the tantrum behaviors of the child. When I was doing research, I learned a lot about man training, and I saw how effective it was to increase communication for children with autism. And manding has been used to decrease behaviors such as tantrums. Man training would be used by teaching the child to request for things that she wants or breaks, by using phrases where she would say I want, or I need help, or I want a break. This is going to teach her to engage in an appropriate behavior by expressing her needs, and she wouldn't need to engage in a tantrum. When she engages in the behavior of tantrums, it can be dangerous for herself and for others, and it's also disruptive in her classroom. And she has previously been reinforced when she engages in this behavior to escape a task or to get something. So teaching her an alternative behavior would benefit her to decrease that behavior. And I think it's important to work on this behavior to decrease the instances in which she engages in the behaviors of tantrums. It's going to benefit her to be more independent and to prepare her for when she's older and has a job. For the study, I used an A-B research design, where I would see how the child responded to man training when it was implemented and how she responded upon removing the intervention. And the independent variable for the study was the use of man training, and the dependent variable was the number of times that the child engaged in a tantrum. I used frequency data collection to record how many times the child engaged in a tantrum during the session. I would make tally marks on the paper, and then at the end of the session, I would add up all the tally marks. And there were a total of 20 sessions for the study, and for each phase there were 5 sessions, and each session was 2 hours long. During baseline phase, I only recorded how many times the child engaged in a tantrum, but I did not use any form of interventions when she engaged in the behavior. I only counted how many times she engaged in the behavior. And once the intervention phase started, I would use verbal prompts when the child engaged in a tantrum by teaching her how to mand using I want or I need phrases. And for example, there was a time when a task was too difficult for her and she engaged in a tantrum, and I verbally prompted her to say I need help. And then she stated the sentence back, and the reinforcer was provided for manding appropriately. And then once the intervention phase was completed, the behavior was brought back to baseline where no interventions were implemented. And once again, only data was collected. Once the second baseline phase was completed, then the second intervention phase took place, and then interventions were introduced again. And during this time, man training was implemented when the behavior occurred. The results showed that during baseline, she had about 11 to 13 instances of tantrum behaviors, and then in the intervention phases, she had about 6 to 9 instances of tantrum behaviors during the sessions. Then during baseline phase 2, she had about 10 to 12 instances per session. And for the last intervention phase, she had about 6 to 8 instances per session. Overall, she responded well to man training, as there is a decrease in the behavior when the intervention is implemented. You can also see that the behavior increased once the intervention was removed, showing that the behavior responded to the intervention. And based on the results, I can say that the child responded well to the intervention of man training, since there is a decrease of the behavior, and she was able to man for things that she wanted and ask for help. And based on my study, I think that many people are going to be able to replicate my study and obtain similar results as me. The data might vary, I believe, but I do believe that they'll have similar results. A limitation that I did face was that there is limited research in the use of true man training to decrease tantrum behaviors. There were other forms of manting, but not true man training when I was looking up research articles. So when I was doing research, I found it difficult to find research that was similar to my study.